He didn't just drown, he was silenced. That's what many people now believe about the sudden and mysterious death of Malcolm Jamal Warner. Just days before he was found lifeless, Malcolm made a disturbing call to someone close, saying he felt watched, paranoid, and unsure who to trust. Now his mother, Pamela Warner, is stepping forward and shattering the silence that has surrounded his case. Was it really just a tragic accident, or the result of something far more sinister? What if the truth Malcolm carried threatened people in power? What if he knew too much? This story has remained buried in whispers and scattered social media theories until now. Because the deeper you look, the more disturbing it becomes. There were warnings, there were signs, and there are still questions that no one seems willing to answer. At 54 years old, Malcolm was entering what those close to him called a period of peace and purpose. He had stepped away from the spotlight, choosing instead to mentor young talent, produce meaningful content, and focus on legacy. Sources close to him say he was preparing a memoir, one that wasn't just about Hollywood memories, but about what really happens behind closed doors. One insider called it a bombshell waiting to drop. Another said he was collecting stories, files, and receipts about toxic behavior, manipulation, and abuse in the industry. And here's where it gets unsettling. Some say that memoir wasn't the only thing he was working on. Rumors began swirling that Malcolm was preparing a docuseries, one that would lift the curtain on powerful people, hidden abuse, and forgotten victims from the golden age of television. Quiet, focused, and determined, he told a friend, "If anything happens to me, this wasn't an accident." But something did happen, and it happened fast. In the week leading up to his death, Malcolm reportedly began acting differently. He cancelled 2 scheduled interviews without warning. He told people he needed to get things in order, a phrase that now feels more ominous than vague. Friends say he became paranoid, anxious, convinced that someone was following him. Then came a voicemail, left on a friend's phone just 48 hours before he died. His voice was low and shaky. "Yo," he said, "something's wrong. I'm being watched. I don't know who to trust anymore. If something happens to me, it wasn't my doing. Don't let them tell you otherwise." At the time, most of his inner circle dismissed it. Maybe it was just stress. Maybe he was overthinking. But now, no one is dismissing anything. What followed was supposed to be a peaceful retreat. Malcolm was staying at a private lakeside property just outside Los Angeles, a favorite spot where he often went to disconnect and work on personal projects. But what happened there raised more questions than it answered. Authorities claimed Malcolm accidentally drowned, that there was no foul play, no injuries, just a tragic loss. But friends and family aren't buying it, and here's why. Malcolm was a strong swimmer. He swam regularly for stress relief and fitness. One friend said he could swim laps for an hour without stopping. The lake was calm, the weather was clear. So how does a healthy man with that kind of physical ability suddenly drown? It doesn't add up. And what's worse, there was reportedly a 3-hour gap between when he was last seen alive and when emergency services were contacted. Who was with him? Why the delay? And why haven't we heard the full 911 call? Officials have only offered vague responses. No signs of struggle, they said. Case closed, pending toxicology. But that toxicology report still hasn't been released. And when questions mount, silence only makes them louder. That's when Pamela Warner stepped in, the woman who raised Malcolm, who supported him through fame, through struggle, and through silence. She wasn't just grieving, she was furious. According to family sources, Pamela wasn't allowed to view her son's body before the official autopsy. She was told not to ask questions. That alone raised red flags, so she took matters into her own hands and ordered a private autopsy. What it found was disturbing. Bruises along the ribs, injuries around the neck. Details that directly contradicted the official story. Pamela's convinced her son was targeted, a close family friend revealed, and she's not backing down. She has every reason not to, because what started as grief has now become a fight for the truth. And Pamela isn't alone. Fans around the world have joined her, and they're digging. Within hours of the news breaking, hashtags like Justice for Malcolm and Investigate Warner's death began trending on TikTok and X. Fans began poring over Malcolm's final social media posts. Some were chilling. One read, "You can't be silent forever. Truth claws its way out." Another simply said, "The walls are closing in." Were these lyrics from a creative project or cries for help disguised as art? One user posted, "Whispers around Hollywood say Malcolm had been planning to speak at a private summit before his death." A gathering of whistleblowers, activists, and survivors from within the entertainment industry. One source said the event was supposed to include testimony from a high-profile victim, someone ready to name names in a decades-old abuse ring. But after Malcolm died, that summit was suddenly cancelled. No explanation, just silence. And it doesn't stop there. Reports have emerged that key documents from Malcolm's storage unit went missing. A former employee claimed hard drives were taken, and surveillance footage from the facility mysteriously malfunctioned that same day. What are the odds? How many coincidences add up before they stop being coincidences? There's also the matter of who stands to lose everything. According to sources, early drafts of Malcolm's exposé included details about a powerful network executive who allegedly tried to silence him years ago. The same executive rumored to have connections to other cover-ups involving child actors and misconduct on sets. "He knew too much," said one insider. And he was getting too close to the truth. If this project had been released, it could have destroyed reputations, ended careers, and cracked open a scandal that Hollywood has spent decades trying to bury. Malcolm wasn't angry. He was focused. He didn't want to start drama. He wanted to help people. Free people. People still stuck in systems that pretended to protect them, but really didn't. And maybe that's why the silence around his death feels so loud. Because those who could speak up aren't. Where were the tributes? Where was the studio's heartfelt post? Where were the old castmates sharing memories and honoring his legacy? Aside from a few short statements, the industry has stayed mostly quiet, and fans noticed. One commented, "Malcolm gave decades to this industry. He helped define a generation. Why does it feel like he's being erased?" Another wrote, "If this was any other icon from that era, there would be tribute shows, interviews, retrospectives. But with Malcolm, there's almost nothing." Even more chilling, at least 2 actors from The Cosby Show reportedly agreed to appear in interviews about Malcolm's legacy, only to back out at the last minute. One allegedly told a close friend, "I can't risk it. I have a family." That sentence alone speaks volumes. What kind of risk are we talking about? What kind of fear would make people go completely silent after the death of someone they worked with for years? According to one veteran journalist, this has the feel of a higher force at play. Like people are being warned, like everyone's waiting to see who moves first. Leaked messages and anonymous forums suggest others from the show, assistants, crew members, even childhood actors, may hold pieces of this puzzle. And some are reportedly on the verge of coming forward. Because while Malcolm's death may have silenced him, it may have also triggered something far bigger than any of us expected. But at the center of it all is Pamela Warner, a mother on a mission. A woman unwilling to let her son become another cold case swept under the rug. According to insiders, Pamela has hired a private investigation team, one with ties to former federal agents. She's reopened communication with journalists her son trusted. And most importantly, she holds something powerful, a digital archive. One Malcolm reportedly gave her instructions for months before his death, encrypted files, password-protected documents, a hard drive labeled, "In case something happens to me." Sources close to the family say Pamela has not opened it yet, but she plans to, publicly. And what could be inside that archive? Notes, scripts, voice memos, unreleased footage, testimonies, legal names? We don't know yet. But if what insiders are saying is true, then what's hidden in that archive could be explosive. Because Malcolm didn't just want to tell his truth. He wanted to protect others who couldn't, who were still trapped in the same system he spent his life quietly pushing against. And that's why this story isn't going away. If anything, it's just getting started. Because the internet doesn't forget. The fans don't forgive. And justice, when delayed, doesn't mean justice denied. In fact, many believe this could be the beginning of something much larger. One Reddit thread with over 50,000 upvotes claimed, "This is the Weinstein story all over again. First comes the silence, then comes the flood." TikTok creators have launched entire pages dedicated to the investigation. YouTube videos exposing timelines, cover-ups, inconsistencies. Journalists, podcasters, and influencers all pulling on the same thread. What really happened to Malcolm Jamal Warner? And even more chilling, some now believe he wasn't the only one, that his death is part of a larger pattern, a warning to others.